All right, so it must be very difficult for the families of those killed. Nothing conclusive, just the preliminary toxicology report showing methanol was found in the bodies of victims of the Enyobeni Tavern tragedy in East London. We're now joined by Professor Michael Daramola, who is head of the UP Department of Chemical Engineering. Professor, thank you for being with us. So methanol can kill you, but only at certain levels. It sounds like these were trace levels, which means that's why we have to wait for further testing, correct?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Francis, and good evening to your viewers as well. Actually, now, if you look at methanol, looking at the amount, I'm just going to show you a demonstration of something before it could kill. It is between 25 milliliter to 90 milliliter consumed before it could be fatal to a human being or an animal. So the problem is this: we do not even actually know the source of the methanol that has been detected in the bloodstream of the deceased.
How confusing. So methanol is an alcohol, but it's usually found in pretty dangerous things. Tell us more.
Thank you very much. If you look at methanol, methanol is the simplest alcohol. You know, alcohol is a group of organic chemicals. So methanol is the simplest of that. And this methanol is industrially used as solvent to dissolve things in industry. And at times now we use it as a pesticide, even as additives to fuel as well. And actually now when we can refer to it even as wood alcohol, at times we call it wood alcohol because at times you can produce it now from the destructive distillation of wood. It is colorless, but the odor is quite very similar to that of ethanol that we normally find in our wine or in any beer we have. But another thing we should also know is this: it is very, very toxic. It is a toxic alcohol, but we can find them in like vodka. You know, vodka contains about 100 ppm, parts per million of methanol, which is about 100 milligram per liter of methanol. But this is not toxic at that level. Even when you have the bread yeast, you are making your bread. Bread yeast now also produces some amount, minimal amount of methanol, even with carbon monoxide. But at this level, they are still okay for the body. Even some fruits that we take naturally, they do contain some methanol as well. And that's what, but if it is above the minimum level that can be tolerated by the body, then it becomes very toxic and fatal to the body as well.
In 2016, the government did release a policy document warning about homemade alcohol brews spiked with methanol. Why do people do that? I guess it's a cheap alcohol. And is it possible that there was methanol in the drinks that these kids, as young as 13 years old, were drinking that night?
Yes, thank you very much. It is possible. And that's why we know what we need to find out, because in homemade alcohol, home distilled spirits, you know, it contains a lot of alcohol. And because when you have made this spirit at home, you don't have the sophisticated technologies to be able to separate alcohol, the methanol from your ethanol. You know, when you want to produce methanol or ethanol, you do it during what we call the fermentation process. And during the fermentation process, you also produce a little bit of methanol. But in the industry, when this one is produced, where ethanol is produced commercially, the industry has the technology required to absolutely separate methanol from ethanol to a level where it will not be toxic to the body. So it could be that the kids or this student who died might have produced homemade spirit, brought the spirit to the tavern and consumed. I think we need to find out what type of the alcohol were consumed or was consumed at that tavern during that night.
Yeah, many people asking exactly the same question. Professor, can you think of anything else, any other cause of death that would result in methanol being found as a byproduct in the corpses? So not at the levels that would have killed them by methanol poisoning, but a byproduct of something else?
Yes, thank you very much. It is possible because, but it's still very debatable, or I will call it an hypothesis, because we could not say specifically whether it happened. One thing that could happen is that we have what we call the formic acid. Formic acid, when you consume methanol in your body, and when you are confronted with favorable condition, there could be a kind of intracellular conversion of that methanol to formic acid. Formic acid is quite very, very toxic to the body, very toxic indeed. But the thing is that we could not actually now say that the condition at that time has warranted or has stimulated the intracellular production of your methanol, your formic acid now from methanol. This is something that has to be critically looked into. A lot of analysis must be done before you can come to a conclusion. That's one thing we could look at. But I think what is quite very important that one should look at, if they can look at that, is to see the source of the alcohol consumed by these students that night. That one is very critical to understanding the situation and to be able to reach a conclusion as to the source or what led to the death of these students.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Professor Michael Daramola from UP, the University of Pretoria, the Department of Chemical Engineering. He is the head, and so many questions that the country is still asking, and of course the families of those youngsters, mostly youngsters, who died in that tragedy. We'll follow that for you.